Many thanks to Jerb, Skillspeeder Gaming, Jaren, DayZ Podcast, Taggy's Tag West, and that one random for literally making this video possible. Weapons in DayZ 1.12 have drastically changed in terms of damage done, but what no one is talking about is how the other stats for weapons have significantly changed in this patch, that the sawn-off BK-18 is actually useful now, or the VSS and the AS Val has been nerfed into the ground, or even how the Glock is a superior weapon over the CR75. So in this video we're going to highlight the biggest buffs and the biggest nerfs of this patch for each weapon in DayZ, and by the end of this video you will know all of the weapon changes that came with 1.12, even the hidden ones. Now in my previous videos I've covered the damage changes in 1.12 extensively, but these 5 weapon stats in total will give us a better idea of the buffs and the nerfs that have happened to weapons in 1.12. So as an example, here is the M4A1. The health damage and the shock damage of the M4 has been buffed by 75% at point blank range, which I'm sure you'll agree is a huge increase for a weapon that was already one of the best in the game. I believe the devs countered this by reducing the other stats of the M4, such as decreasing its accuracy by 40%, so the effective range of the M4 is effectively been cut in half. But this isn't the only nerf to the M4. The speed of the 5.56 round was nerfed in 1.11 previously by 10% from 1000 down to 910, but it's been nerfed again, and so have the aerodynamics of this round, which means it fires slower and it also gets slowed down faster when it travels through the air. So the accuracy, speed and aerodynamics have been reduced, giving players an incentive to use the M4 at close to medium distances now, instead of being able to snipe players at 1000 meters with the ACOG like you could in 1.11. The final stat, penetration, has been improved for the M4, and this is mainly due to the caliber stat being changed, and this doesn't include the ability to penetrate armor, by the way. This stat is solely for penetrating surfaces of buildings and walls and trees and all the rest of it. Combining all of the buffs and the nerfs for this weapon, we can see that the M4 overall was buffed. Moving on to the AK-101, which uses the same rounds as the M4, the nerfs and the buffs are the same here, apart from the AK-101 having less of a nerf to its accuracy, but I would still say the M4 is a superior weapon. A weapon that received a major nerf this patch is the AK-74, and that nerf comes in the form of the huge reduction in its aerodynamics. This weapon was fantastic at sniping players at range. It even did more damage than a Mosin and a Winchester beyond 800 meters in 1.11. It was a sniper rifle, so they fixed it basically. Now it's one of the worst assault rifles to use at range, but due to the damage buff this weapon got, it still received a net buff as a result. A weapon that has seen a nerf though in this patch is the AKS-74U, which uses the same rounds as the AK-74. If you thought the AK-74 was a little bit nerfed, this one is majorly nerfed due to its speed and aerodynamic changes on this weapon. The only reason you'd really pick this up over other assault rifles in DayZ now is the inventory size, which isn't really that beneficial. One of the best weapons in DayZ right now is the AKM, which received the biggest damage buff of any assault rifle in terms of its shock damage, a 93% increase in shock damage. This makes it competitive with the M4 I think, but I would like to get your opinion in the comments. Do you think the AKM is a better weapon, or do you think the M4 is a better weapon? The biggest nerf of this patch goes to the AS Val and VSS though, in all aspects apart from accuracy, which wasn't fantastic anyway. The VSS and AS Val have had a major nerf in this patch, especially when it comes to aerodynamics. So not only do the rounds for this weapon fly incredibly slow like they did in 1.11, they also get slowed down much faster too, which reduces their damage over distance. It reduces how far away you can hit the targets. It's not great, meaning that you shouldn't attempt to use this weapon at long ranges anymore. However, the armor piercing rounds used by these weapons haven't seen a speed nerf and have actually received a penetration buff to shoot through surfaces easier, which would make sense with armor piercing rounds. I put the LAR into the assault rifle category as it fits better into this category than any other category, and as you can see the damage buff is very low for this weapon, but it's still a very powerful round with great aerodynamics because this is the 308 round fired by the Winchester and the Blaze. Given these changes, the LAR is now no more accurate than an assault rifle in DayZ. The next category is sniper rifles, starting off with the Winchester, which has received very nice buffs in this patch across the board, suggesting that the devs might want people to rely less on assault rifles and more on lower RPM weapons, which I'm all for. Compared to the Blaze, the Winchester has been buffed more, maybe because more people believe that the Blaze is a superior weapon, as I've seen in previous comments. The Mosin tells a similar story with its damage buffs, but not much else has changed here. However, when compared to the sawn-off Mosin, the sawed-off Mosin has received a big nerf to its ballistics compared to the Mosin, making sawing off the Mosin even worse than it was in 1.11. The final weapon in this category is the SVD, which has had a good damage and accuracy buff overall, and essentially remains the same in all other aspects, making it again one of the best weapons in DayZ. SMGs are next, and to break it down quickly, they've all received a very nice buff, but their accuracy has been brought down to be in line with pistols now. The UMP in particular has had its aerodynamics improved a lot, but hasn't seen much in terms of damage. However, when we look at the Scorpion, this weapon has had a significant damage boost, as you can see, I guess to bring it in line with the SMGs in DayZ. Almost as buffed as a Scorpion is the SG5K or the MP5, which has a large damage boost, as you can see, and unlike the other two SMGs has no accuracy penalty. Just be aware that the base aerodynamics of the 9mm round used by the MP5 is very low compared to the UMP and the Scorpion. The rifle category has been buffed the most in this patch, and that starts with one of the best weapons in DayZ now, the SKS. While it does do twice the damage it did in the last patch, it has only minor nerfs, making this one of the most buffed weapons in the game, and for its rarity, a staple weapon that I can imagine a lot of people will lean towards in this patch. A weapon that was buffed even more than the SKS though is the CR527, and this weapon would be classed as a sniper rifle now, but I'm keeping it in the rifle category because in 1.11 it was considered a rifle, so it's better to compare it that way. It's safe to say though that it's officially a sniper rifle though as of this patch. Maybe not as good as the other sniper rifles though, but still great at long distances. While the BK-18 has had a buff in damage like the other rifles in this patch, this weapon is now half as accurate as it once was, but because it only zeroes up to 200 meters and doesn't allow any optics, that nerf makes no difference here, meaning that the BK-18 has seen a very nice buff. The BK-18, as you probably know, can be sawn off, and in this patch has received a monstrous accuracy increase, a much needed buff here, but not as good as the BK-18 obviously. The only rifle that has a net nerf in this patch is the Repeater, losing 35% of its health damage and 40% of its aerodynamics. The speed and penetration increase that you see with this weapon doesn't make up for the damage or the aerodynamic nerf. Finally, for the rifle category, we have the Lowly Sporter, which has an accuracy buff so impressive that it literally breaks my chart here. In total, it has 233% increase in accuracy, which is great for hitting players at a distance, but with how much the aerodynamics was nerfed in this patch, it makes it very difficult to hit anything that's moving. I would say that the Sporter has been nerfed at a distance. Shotguns in this patch have received a nerf in general, even though it shows here that the BK-133 and BK-43, which are statistically the same here, have had a buff. This can be seen when we look at the Vega and the sawed-off BK-43. So the 133 and the 43 have had a slight buff, but the Vega and the sawed-off 43 have had a nerf. When it comes to buckshot and slugs, not much has changed, but the rubber shells have changed significantly and their ballistics have been obliterated in exchange for more damage here, and that damage mostly comes in form of shock damage. This gets worse with the Vega and the sawed-off, as you can see. The final category here is pistols, which in general have been buffed apart from the Deagle, which has an accuracy increase but a massive damage nerf, resulting in a clear nerf for this weapon. The Magnum also received an accuracy buff but twice that of 1.11, taking its effective range from 130 meters up to around 200 meters, making the Magnum more viable at longer distances. Just be aware that the aerodynamics of this round is very poor. The 1911 has also seen accuracy buffs here and also aerodynamic buffs to its 45 round that it uses, and the FNX also uses this round, but the FNX has seen slightly more of an increase to its accuracy. Both of these weapons have been buffed the same, I would say though. The Glock has seen a significant buff in this patch, making it a superior weapon of the CR75 due to its increased accuracy. As you can see here, 22% increase for the 75 and a 100% increase for the Glock. The statistical differences between these two pistols is that the Glock is roughly 33% better at shooting targets at a distance, and it isn't any worse at anything else, so that makes the Glock a better weapon. A weapon that has remained roughly the same in terms of ballistics is the IJ-70, but nonetheless has received a major damage buff. Not much of a damage increase here for the MK2, and the aerodynamics makes this weapon much worse at a range, so don't try to snipe people with the MK2 or the Sporter, I would say. Whether this weapon has received a buff or a nerf in this patch, I'm not sure, but because the aerodynamics decrease, I would say that the MK2 has been slightly nerfed. Now if we take a step back and look at these 6 different weapon categories in DayZ to see how much they've changed, we can see that assault rifles have received a nice damage buff in general, with accuracy and aerodynamics taking a hit overall, which means that assault rifles aren't as good as they once were at range in this patch. For sniper rifles, there's a decent damage boost too, and the accuracy increase that can't be ignored, even though the accuracy increase is unnecessary as snipers are very accurate anyway. Just be aware that in general, sniper rounds will be slowed down more by air friction in this patch, so in turn will mean that sniping feels a little bit different at longer distances. SMGs are one of the most buffed categories in this patch, especially for damage and aerodynamics. Just be aware that the Scorpion and the UMP have had a slight accuracy nerf. The most buffed category is by far the rifle category though, with improvements to damage and accuracy making rifles more viable in this patch for sure, especially the SKS. Shotguns, I would say, have received a net nerf, mainly due to the ballistic nerfs of the rubber shells. In general, I'd say roughly they're the same as they were in 1.11 apart from the rubber shells. And finally, the pistol category got a nice damage and accuracy buff, but not much has changed when it comes to pistols. You can shoot people about 50 meters more with each of the pistols now, and you will do more damage, but then again, all the weapons in DayZ are doing more damage now. Speaking of which, if we tally up all of the weapon buffs and all of the weapon nerfs that you've seen across all of the weapons in DayZ, damage and accuracy has been increased, while the other stats remain roughly the same. So to conclude, weapons in general have received buffs, and that buff mostly comes in the form of damage for most weapons. Damage is a very important topic when it comes to weapons in DayZ, especially with the changes in 1.12 to damage drop-off, which you can learn more about in this video. Finally, for this video, there have been some other miscellaneous changes, such as the rate of fire of the Magnum, which has a slight, mostly unnoticeable buff as it fires slightly faster. It has an RPM of 210 in 1.11, but now in 1.12 it has 278 rounds per minute instead, roughly a 20% increase. Other changes are the fact that you can zero down to 25 meters with the following sight attachments now, so if you're going into CQB, be sure to zero down for that slightly better accuracy in close quarters. In other news, the WOBO website is finally up to date, sorry about the delay. The damage drop-off tool has also been reworked and includes shock and health damage, and in the future I can actually add armor to this, so we'll be able to see armor values on this chart in the future. The website also contains all the numbers I used in this video, so if you want to compare the actual stats found in the game files, I've included it in the damage drop-off tool. You have sounds on the weapon info tool and damage drop-off there too. There's a lot of information on the website if you want to know more. If you want to support the website, you can do so through Patreon or becoming a YouTube member, and also you get videos earlier and you get extra tips to reward those people who indirectly pay for my ramen, which I have with cold water. Thank you very much for support. Maybe I can have like sausages in my ramen in the future. Let me and potentially the devs know your opinion on the buffs and the nerfs in this patch. Do you believe a certain weapon was buffed or nerfed too much, or maybe not buffed or nerfed enough? Thank you very much for watching and have a good day.